Now let's move on to these 8 in the manager ID column. It was probably just an error in data entry, but we're going to pull that column up just to check. So let's come down here. We're going to return a data frame that only includes the rows with a null value in the manager ID column. We're going to call our data frame and specify our column is null function. That gives us a list. That'll give us a data frame, and it looks like this gives us so this gives us all 8 rows in the data frame. So let's go to the manager ID column. This is a testament for why you should always go back and reference your data set before you start deleting things willy-nilly, because all of the null values in the manager ID column are connected to the same manager. So it's looking like exactly what I thought it was. It's an error in data entry. So what we'll do to confirm that is I am going to return a data frame including only employees or including only rows that have Webster Butler in the manager name column. So we're going to do that just like we did before, and we'll run that and go over to those columns. Here we go, and just as I suspected. So Mr. Butler does have a manager ID. It's 39. Who knows if it really was just an issue of data entry for why he has no values in some of the columns, but it doesn't really matter because it's an easy fix. So we're going to replace all of the null values in the manager ID column with Webster Butler's manager ID, and then we're going to update the manager ID column in the data frame so that it reflects that change. Wow, that was a mouthful. In this instance, it really is going to be a lot easier done than said. So we're going to start by calling our data frame and specifying our column. And then outside of the brackets, we're going to do dot and then call the fill NA function. And inside of the parentheses, we're going to do 39.0 because that is his manager ID. And we're going to run that and we'll get a list. Yay. So that means it worked. Now, in order to update the manager ID column to reflect this change, we'll go ahead and set this line of code to equal the manager ID column. And then run it again. Nothing happened, always a good sign. Now, just to verify that it worked, we're gonna call our data frame and use the isNull function again and return a sum and see if we have any null values left. And it looks like we are good to go. Okay, now that we have handled all of the null values in our data frame, let's go ahead and check the data types for each of our columns. We'll do that by calling our data frame and then using .dtypes, Control Enter to run. And this gives us a list of our column names and the data types for each column. Let's go ahead and convert our column values to their appropriate data types, and then we'll commit those changes into our data frame. So I'm going to start by calling our data frame and then using convert d_dtypes to convert the values. I'm not going to run this just yet because all it's going to do is give me a data frame, and it won't actually commit those values to the data frame that we have. So in order to commit those changes, I'm going to set our df variable to equal this line of code, and I'm going to run this cell now. Down here, I'm going to run .dtypes to check our new data types. Wait a minute. Okay, so in order to be able to do that, we're going to call our pandas library and then reference the toDatetime function. And inside of the parentheses, we're going to specify our data frame and our column. And we're going to do the date of birth column first. Run that. So we get a list of dates, and as you can see down here, the data type is now date time, which is awesome. So we're going to commit this change to that column and run it. We're going to do the same thing for the other columns. I am almost 99% sure that there is an easier way to convert all of these columns simultaneously, but I have not learned how to do that yet. If anyone knows how to do that, feel free to share that information. I am always down for optimizing my code. I'm gonna move this cell up above these two data frames that we created. So when we restart and run all of these cells, these data frames will be affected and their date columns will also be converted from string to date time. So let's come back down here and just check our data types one more time. Okay, and it looks like we've got all of our data types converted and we've handled all of our nulls. So I think that it's safe to say that we have successfully completed our data cleaning step. And if we come across anything that we need to clean up as we go through our analysis, there is nothing wrong with coming back up to this section. The next step will be the actual data analysis. Stay tuned.